And we're live. It is 3:49 in the AM on May 5th, 2020. And since I couldn't sleep, we're doing a live stream. So let's get this party started. Woohoo! All right. Hey, everybody. If anybody's actually watching this, this is Jeremy from the Practical IT channel. It's 3:49 in the AM. And hey, happy COVID. I couldn't sleep. My sleep schedule has been just completely whacked out since this thing has been going on. And I don't see any relief in sight on my sleep schedule. So I decided to get back up out of bed and we're going to do this live stream. I'm going to run through a couple of installs on things and we'll see how long we go. So far with the delay that I put in for the live stream, this appears to be working much better than the previous live stream I did. So hopefully when I watch the video back myself, it will look a little bit better and sound a little bit better. I'm also using my other microphone. So this is a bit of an experiment on my part as well. So if it's really bad, then I'm just going to unlist the video and no harm, no foul, and my apologies to anybody that's watching this. But I'm going to check the chat real quick. Bitstream of 2. I don't really care if that's lower than recommended. Okay. So we are going to do a new VM. We're going to build one on VirtualBox first. And we're going to call this TKL 16 WordPress because the TurnKey Linux 16 appliances have started trickling out and WordPress was among the first of them. So we're going to continue. We'll give it the standard 2 gigs of RAM and we'll create a hard disk. We'll give it 15 gigs, which is probably overkill. In fact, I'm sure it's overkill. We'll open up the settings for that. And first we'll go to System, turn off the floppy drive, add a second processor core, turn on PAE NX, display. We can leave alone because it's a VM. We don't need to add more RAM for video or anything like that. For the optical drive, the virtual optical drive, we're going to add. And hopefully we can get into this without a problem. Okay, hold that thought for a moment. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, let's try this again. Add 55, download, ISO, turnkey, WordPress, open. We're also going to choose that. Oh, excuse me. Audio disabled, network bridged. Okay. And we'll go ahead and get our appliance started. There we go. Installed a hard disk. We'll take a peek. Is anybody out there? All right. Thank you, Carlos. I wasn't sure if anybody was actually going to show up to this. Where are you seeing me from, Carlos? Are you in Europe somewhere? Or are you just up really late like me? Or really early, depending on the way you want to look at it, I suppose. Okay, so we're going to just use guided entire disk. LVM is overkill for what I'm using this for. Finish partitioning and write changes to disk. Yes. All right. So while we're waiting on this, I'm going to move the window out of the way, and I'm going to open a new tab. And we might as well, well, actually, let's jump over here. All right. So since I'm going to be up for a while, I may as well turn the server back on. So we'll hit power on. And sends us back to the login screen. Power on. And refresh. This takes a few seconds to catch up. While we're waiting for that, this is almost done. It's installing the Grub bootloader. Yes. And we'll check the server one more time. Alright, let's try power on one more time. We'll give it a few seconds while this is completing the install. So I am very happy with the way this is going so far. The audio seems to be going through just fine. The drop frames is at 0.1%. So Okay, so we'll eject the live medium, and then we'll see about rebooting this. Everything seems to be falling into place. Press enter to continue. Reboot system. Okay, and so that didn't actually remove my disk the way it was supposed to. No harm, no foul. We'll close that down. We'll come back to the VirtualBox screen and settings. Storage. And we're going to remove disk from virtual drive. Okay. And when we start up, it should be all right. Okay, while we're waiting for that to boot, I'm going to step away for just a moment to grab a bottle of water, and I will be right back. Alright, sorry about that. My throat was getting a little dry. Alright, password requirements. MySQL password. And WordPress admin password. And we'll just accept that for right now. We're going to skip this piece for their backup and migration service. And we'll skip that as well. And see how this goes. Install. Alright. So let's check. Let's check and see where we're at. Nicaragua, welcome. Student at University of Alabama. Okay. 1:57 a.m. You can go to bed at 4 or 5. Well, hey, welcome. I'm glad to have you here, Carlos. I hope you survived Cinco de Mayo without any incident. And yeah, this is not really a regular thing for me yet, but now that I think I've got the live stream issues worked out, this is probably going to become a more regular thing. I don't think I'm going to be doing it at this particular time in the middle of the night or in the wee hours of the morning. Again, however you want to look at it. But this was just me making use of my insomnia at the moment. Alright, so we're at 74.229 for the close that. We're at 74.229 for the WordPress. And of course, since it's a self-signed certificate, it's going to give you a security warning. Advanced, accept risk and continue. And log in. And with that, we are presented with the base WordPress install on TurnKey Linux. And already we're being prompted with updates. We'll update the... Well, actually, I don't use a Kismet, so we're going to go to plugins, and I'm just going to delete these because I don't use them. And then we'll go back to updates, and we're going to update to the very latest version of WordPress. And jump back here and see if we can pop out the chat. There we go, that's better. If we do that, then I can minimize that window. Okay, so Carlos, you say it's the first time learning about TurnKey Linux. I've been using TKL for probably going on 4 or 5 years ago. 4 or 5 years. Let's see. TurnKey have their own hub or infrastructure that you can use if you don't want or have an on-prem system. You can also virtualize, but it's got to be individually. Actually, it doesn't necessarily have to be individual. So when I'm using VirtualBox, I normally do individual VMs and have it virtualized separately. In a few minutes, I'll jump over to my Proxmox server, which is on-prem. It's a home lab situation. But with version 16 at least, TurnKey Linux has started making their appliances available as containers. So if you are using something like LXC or Linux containers, you could have a much lower resource version of the TurnKey Linux appliances running. And excuse me, I'm sorry about the coughing. So I am just starting to get into containers. I've just recently put up the TurnKey Linux server. But you can also use a lot of the TurnKey Linux appliances in Amazon, AWS. I think Vultr is the VPS service that allows you to upload your own ISO images. So you could do that and spin it up there on a low-cost server. So, you know, a $5 a month server would, you know, be more than adequate for, you know, starting the building process for a WordPress site. Or something like that. I've actually got a Nextcloud instance running on the $5 a month plan at Vultr. And the performance seems to be pretty decent. The big limiting factor at the $5 at the $5 spot for Vultr and using like a Nextcloud appliance would be storage space. So Nextcloud gets used a lot as a Google Drive replacement, and it would be very easy for somebody to run into the limitations at the $5 plan. So LXC is something that I'm just, you know, getting started with. It's built into Proxmox, and I'll bring that up in a few minutes. So if you have any other questions, keep them coming. And looks like you're the only one or one of very few on the live stream right now. It says 3 concurrent viewers, but I'm not sure how accurate that is necessarily. So let's see if we jump over here. I can log into my Proxmox server. And that looks better. And so this allows you to create virtual machines or containers. The VMs in Proxmox, you might be familiar with this already, but for anybody that's not, the virtual machines in Proxmox are built on top of KVM. The containers are built on LXC. And so there is, if we jump over here and yeah, part of me, it's been a long day, and with the insomnia, my brain might not be thinking 100% up to speed right at the moment. But there is a command. And let me see. Okay, so okay, so there is a command for Proxmox. I think it's this one. Proxmox Appliance Manager. Yeah, this will download the appliance templates. So, update. So this will download the appliance templates. And then if we were to come into PVE, create container, and resource pool, okay, password. Next, storage, local, that's fine. Template. Okay, so that's not updated properly. My bad. I just saw a video earlier on running these updates. But I'm relatively new to Proxmox. I just switched over to it from wow, I'm really having a brain fart now. Okay. Yes, you could have a separate service or app on a VM. Let's see. Okay, so let me work through this brain fart. This is kind of embarrassing. Okay, yes, I just had to type that out for some reason. I switched to Proxmox from XCPNG just because one of my main uses for virtualization on this little one-use server I've got is to do these excuse me, videos and live streams. And XCPNG, I give them props for what they're doing, but they were just pushing so many updates so quickly, especially for their web-based management interface. I was spending more time managing that platform than actually using it. So it just, I got to the point where I decided to make the move to Proxmox because it just was a little more seamlessly put together. And other than one little nag screen when you first go into the web interface, it doesn't really bother you about subscriptions. So that was sort of my reasoning for switching to Proxmox. And I had previously done a video on KVM and Virt Manager, and I was interested in doing a little more with KVM, but given the recent announcements by Red Hat that they're pushing Cockpit for a management interface for KVM instead of Virt Manager, I also use that as a push towards moving to Proxmox. So all right. So I've not used Univention. at this point, yes, Lawrence Systems has some sweet videos about XCP-ng. Tom Lawrence was where I first heard about XCP-ng and really started to do a fairly deep dive into it. And yeah, the big difference is that, you know, he's got employees and resources for equipment and things, and with that he can spend a little more time on the maintenance, or maybe he's built scripts to keep things up to date for him. I guess, you know, it was one of those things that there was maybe a little resistance on my part to jump through some of those extra hoops when I started looking at excuse me, I don't know where all this coughing is from. When I started looking at Proxmox, and after they released their 6.1 version, it really made me start reconsidering continuing down the XCP-ng path. That's not to say that I won't circle around to that at some future point, but right now Proxmox is doing what I want, and since the server is a little bit older, it does feel a little bit lighter weight to me. And so I feel like I'm getting a little bit more out of this older server. So yeah, that's kind of the path I went down for arriving where I'm at with the server setup. I've only had the server up with Proxmox for two and a half weeks, and I'm not 100% satisfied with my setup yet. Since I had XCP-ng on here previously, and my one big mistake in the install process was not completely wiping all the hard drives before I started installing Proxmox. So the problem that presented is that currently I've got 4 drives in the machine. I've got the base of Proxmox installed on the smallest drive, which is an 80 gig SATA drive. The other 3 disks are 500 gigs apiece, and I combined 2 of them with LVM, and I somehow messed up my LVM configuration for those 2 drives. So unfortunately, the drive that I had meant to put all my ISO images on, I currently have the virtual disks for my VMs on that hard drive right now. Not the end of the world, but not the best naming convention either, and not the best use of the available space on the server. So it's a learning process. And it's not a production server. It's just for me banging around on at home. And hopefully when my employer gets the money together to remodel our building and put in a real server room, I will end up running this on the new server we would get at that time at that job. So I feel like all this playing around I'm doing in my free time and recording these videos and live streams and things, it's only going to help me down the road with various things at my day job. All right. So, with Proxmox, if we were to duplicate what I did on VirtualBox, I can go over to Data Center and Storage, and I believe, let's see, okay. Well, let's see. Any other? All right, a ThinkCentre M700 with an i5, 16 gigs of RAM. Hey, Proxmox should run pretty decent on that. And yes, you're right. We do have a bunch of free time going right now. My sleep schedule has been really crazy. I've been sort of riding the roller coaster like everybody else. I hate to admit this, but my YouTube videos have been a little more sporadic during this time than I'd like to admit. And some of that is because I've been moving my office around, and so I didn't want a bunch of junk in the background until I can get my green screen set back up and you know, chroma key that stuff out. I haven't wanted to record too many videos, at least not with the camera turned on. But yeah, I would say give it a try. Proxmox isn't going to cost you anything. There are, as I mentioned earlier, there's a little nag screen that comes up every time you log into Proxmox, the web interface of Proxmox. And there's a script out there to get rid of that. There are manual steps out there as well that you could follow. Basically, the idea is that by default, it comes set up for their enterprise sources for updates. It is Debian based, so in the sources.list file. And basically what you have to do is you have to change your repository to the community one and make a couple other little tweaks, and then the little nag screen goes away, which I did that on a previous install of Proxmox a couple of years ago when I looked at it in the 5. Whatever version it was at the time, 5.1, 5.2. It's now at 6.1, which came out in December of 2019. And so far, I'm happier with the way it runs. I'm still using the same server that I used before, but the performance seems better. The changes to the web interface seem a little bit more thought out. And yeah, it just right now it's doing what I need it to do, and so I'm going to stick with it until I find some bug or limitation that makes me want to jump ship back to XCPNG, and then I will give that a spin again for a while and check out the latest developments there. But yeah, I can't recommend Lawrence Systems enough. And no, this isn't a paid plug of any sort. Tom Lawrence is a smart dude. I've been watching his videos for quite a while now. I also watch Willie Howe quite regularly, as well as Crosstalk Solutions. Those are like my 3 go-to tech channels right now. And I've been really happy with the information from each of those guys. And especially their Unify videos. All 3 of them have covered Unify to a very deep level, and I found their videos at just the right time, because previous to moving to Unify equipment, I had been running Zyxel, a prosumer / small business router from Zyxel, or Zyxel, or however you want to pronounce that. And the company decided to drop support for the model I had. So after 6 months or so of not having updates, I made the plan to move to Unify equipment, and I haven't looked back. Can it set up headless-ish way, like not having to have the ThinkCenter hooked up to a keyboard and mouse, just the web UI? Yes, absolutely, that can be done. In fact, I have my server running in another room from where I'm at, and my office is a couple of rooms down from where that server is set up, mostly for noise reasons, because it is a 1U server and it does generate a good amount of noise with the fans running full bore. So yeah, as long as your particular ThinkCenter does not complain about not having a keyboard hooked up, there's nothing in Proxmox that would prevent you from unhooking the keyboard after install. The big thing is there are some computers out there, and it's really kind of a case-by-case basis, where some of them just downright complain if you don't have a keyboard plugged in. Some people I've seen on Reddit and whatnot have gone to the extent of taking an old keyboard, an old USB keyboard, and just cutting the cord, tossing the keyboard itself, but using it to plug into the back of the computer just so it would register having something plugged in. Your mileage may vary. I don't want to say that'll work in every case, but I've seen some people do things like that. All right. So, see what we've got for updates. And we do have updates. So let's go ahead and run that, since we don't have other VMs running at the moment. And hey, we're just killing some time together, so it's all good. keep the questions coming. I will try to answer them the best I can. I'm not an expert on everything, but I usually have some halfway decent resources. Love Zyzel. I also like playing with WatchGuard. I used to work for a VoIP company. Very nice. Honestly, I was pretty happy with Zyzel until they dropped support for my router, which you know, when you invest the kind of money they're asking in that kind of equipment, I want to get more than 2.5 or 3 years out of it before they drop updates. And I guess I was just kind of miffed with them, upset with them that they dropped this so quickly in favor of pushing out new models. I did find their object-based interface to be a little challenging when I first got it, but once I'd configured through it a few times, I didn't find it to be that bad. I would be interested in playing with some of their equipment again in the future, if I could find some used stuff at the right price, or you know, they ran a sale, or something along that line. I was never impressed with SonicWall. It's funny you mentioned that. I spent 5 years, 4.5, 5 years as an instructor at a vocational college and taught IT courses. And the simulation software that the school was using for our IT classes had built the wireless segments on SonicWall. And the funny thing is, I have only ever seen SonicWall in one place, and that was at that teaching job. They had SonicWall equipment. And I haven't run into it in the wild since. I've never seen WatchGuard in the wild, doing the things that I do. Doesn't mean it's not out there. I'm sure it is out there. I see reference to it quite a bit, but I've never encountered one. Okay, system is up to date. And let's refresh this. Okay. Task error. Interesting. Buster in release is not signed. Huh. Okay, well. Alright, no updates available. That's what I wanted to see. So, yeah. So this is the little server I'm running. It's super micro with 2 Xeon chips for 8 cores and 16 gigs of RAM. I bought this server, oh my gosh, 8-ish years ago. Got it used. I ordered it from unixsurplus.com. At the time, they had some of the best deals that I could find. Now I've been finding stuff on eBay that's really quite decent, and the prices seem really good. I've got one place that I tend to order from on eBay quite a lot. So let's see. Meraki, yes. I have to give it to Meraki and Cisco with that particular product line. I'm impressed with it to a point. And the only thing that keeps me from recommending it more is that in my side consulting business that I run, I deal with nonprofits. And for nonprofit use, especially since most of them are on extraordinarily tight budgets, I don't recommend Meraki to them because of the licensing, the yearly licensing on them. So, in fact, my normal day job, I work as a technology coordinator at a library. And, of course, library being a nonprofit, right before I joined the library staff, they had, I guess the previous fall, they had made a move to separate from the city. So they were a city library, and now they're a district library. And with the nonprofit status of the library, the inherited Wi-Fi access point I had in the library is Meraki. And I have to admit, it's been rock solid, but the price that we were going to be charged for another year of support and the licensing and all that made it much more cost effective for us to jump over to Unify access points and put in a Unify Gen 2 cloud key for our controller. And so I already used Unify at home, so it was a bit of a no-brainer. And this was sort of the path that the previous technology coordinator had set up to go down anyways, and it just happened to be that I agreed and thought it was a good direction to go. And so within the next month, once I get access to the library again, I will be finishing the swap over to the Unify stuff. Buffalo. All right. So when I was in college, I joined the ACM, the Association for Computing Machinery, I believe is what the acronym is these days. And at the time, of course, living off from financial aid and putting myself through college and everything, I was on a tight budget. I ended up buying a Buffalo router for the sole purpose of hacking and putting dd-wrt on it. That was somewhere between 2004 and 2005 I did that. By the time they started offering it as an official firmware available preloaded. I had already moved on to Zyzel, and so I haven't really gone back to that sort of consumer level equipment, but for the price that it was available at the time, and this was 802.11g time frame. It was pretty amazing what you could do with cheap Buffalo routers. In fact, for a while there, once I graduated, I had two of them set up. One I put in wireless repeater mode, and so I was able to blanket the house I was living at in with Wi-Fi signal on the cheap, and do a lot more than I could have at the time afforded to do with any other equipment. But yeah, it's it's funny that you mentioned so many of these different products that I've had some exposure to and worked with, and it's amazing to me how many classmates and colleagues I've had over the years. They never operated outside what you could get off the shelf at the local Best Buy or Walmart, for that matter. I guess I've always marched to the beat of a different drum a little bit. I was the first in the family to really deep dive into computers. And the bug hit me early, and it hit me hard, and I've lived computers and technology ever since. From hardware to networking to smart home technologies these days. It's been an interesting ride, and just a lot of fun along the way to see all the changes in the industry. So, all right, I am very happy with this live stream. I can't say enough now that I found the right settings with YouTube and OBS to keep this all going, and not dropping a bunch of extra frames, and just making it much nicer to pass the time with, especially since the fan on my computer isn't going 90 miles an hour like my previous couple of live stream tests that I've run. So, all right. Guess you're listening to me ramble in the middle of the night or early morning. Let's see. So if we take a look under local templates, they've got, the cool thing about Proxmox is that they've got the TurnKey Linux stuff available by default. So if you want to do LXC, you could really get going. I guess that did update the way it was supposed to. So all of the version 16 TurnKey Linux appliances are based on Debian Buster, Debian 10. And these have just been released within the last couple of weeks. They released a set of 10 of what they considered their most popular ones all at the beginning in one lump release cycle. So that's kind of cool. I also tend to make use of Bitnami quite a bit. So Bitnami is very similar to TurnKey Linux. They have a lot of appliances available. And again, they've got pre-built virtual machines. You can download a lot of these as ISOs. They're set up for working with AWS and some of these other ones, other VPS providers. So, Docker, Kubernetes, it's a pretty amazing time to be involved with technology. Yeah, I agree. I have a friend in Chicago that he's a big gamer. He plays a lot of League of Legends, and I've tried and talked with him until I've been blue in the face to try to convince him to upgrade from his Netgear to something a little more prosumer level. But he swears by his Netgear Nighthawk, and granted that's closer to a $250 router, and it's marketed towards gamers, so that's what he bought into. Which it was fine when he was living in an apartment. But now that he's in a house, I've really been trying to convince him to do something different. So yes, Proxmox has the TurnKey Linux templates built in so that you can easily build. Let's see, go back here. So you can easily build a container from those templates. So let's see if I can actually get through this and have it work properly this time. I haven't messed a lot with the LXC portion of Proxmox at this point yet. Let's see. So let's do template. So somewhere along the line, I've got this messed up. So I should be able to see more of the templates that are built in. And this is something I've just got to go in and read more in the documentation for Proxmox. I've been in this virtualization mindset since like 2000, when I installed the original VMware, the product that came, VMware Workstation, and this was on like a first generation Pentium running, I think I was running SUSE Linux at the time. Yeah. Let me see if there's probably something I need to do in here to make that available. So, oh, yeah, it puts the template list available to you. So if I select Turnkey Nextcloud and say download, it'll grab that template for me. And if we give it a minute or 3, we can come back to this and take a closer look. So, yeah, it seems like there's a lot of League of Legends players out there. I've never, well, let me back up. I have not done computer gaming on a regular basis since I migrated off from the Amiga platform in the late 90s. Once I moved to running PC hardware, I spent a very brief period of time on Windows 98, which was awful in my estimation. And then I moved to Linux. So I spent my college years running almost nothing but Linux. I had a couple of classes that I had to run Windows for. But yeah, since I didn't run Windows, and at that time gaming on Linux was awful, other than this game called Xbill, which, you know, you're probably familiar with. It lets you it shows a little cartoon version of Bill Gates trying to convert every computer over to Windows, and then you get to make him go splat. But my opinion on Bill Gates has changed in the last 5 years, and I could actually listen to the guy talk now, whereas in the 90s I couldn't stand him. But I absolutely agree with you. I could not live with a Nighthawk. After I got a taste of prosumer / SMB network equipment, I couldn't look back. I love the idea of having a separate access point, not built into my router, so that if I want to update my wireless and the router's running fine, I can do that. I've also played a lot with different versions of pfSense over the years, which I know Tom Lawrence does a lot of videos on pfSense. And if I thought that the low end pfSense appliance would meet my needs, I would probably buy one of those. Right now, since I'm the only one in my apartment, I am using a Unify USG, and I'm patiently awaiting the UXG to come out, which is the next generation version. So let's see. Windows XP, Linux in high school. Actually, so all through college, I never used Microsoft Office. Undergraduate and grad school. So I was lucky. My college used Blackboard, and they had it properly set up so that I could submit my papers in PDF format. So, for the better part of 20 years, I've been using, I started off in Star Office and then moved to Open Office, and I'm on LibreOffice now. So I've never looked back. I despise the subscription model that Microsoft has pushed Office towards. I also don't run Windows except for one machine. So my sole Windows machine, I've made it as Linuxy as possible. I've got the Windows subsystem for Linux installed on it. I've got Chocolatey installed on it, so that a lot of the open source software that I use on a regular basis, I can install from a command line the same way I would using apt or yum or DNF on Linux. Oh, let me bring up my lonely Optiplex here. So I've got all three platforms in my apartment. My main machines I use are Macs because when I was looking to purchase computers, the last time I was looking to purchase new computers, I've got a lot of used stuff, but last time I purchased new computers, the Macs offered me more flexibility for max RAM and storage options than what I could get on a similarly priced x86 PC at the time. So this particular Windows machine is, I think I paid less than $100 for it on eBay. I picked it up because it's identical to the machine on my desk at the library as far as hardware. And so I've tried to keep one Windows machine around just for testing things. So Chocolatey, if you're not familiar, lets you do a lot of, it gives you a package manager on Windows basically. So all this whole list is things I've got installed with Chocolatey. If I want to update it, just enter one command and it will work through, and Choco list should give me a list of all the packages that are available. This will probably take a minute to come up. Yes, Microsoft Access. When when I went through my undergraduate program, and admittedly I went back to school a little later than most people, but the only time I had to use Microsoft Access was for my Visual Basic.net classes, and I did that all in the computer lab. So, let's see. Bring my Windows machine back over here. So this gives you some idea of all the different packages that are available in in Chocolatey. I did not realize they had a Donkey Kong game available. Why not? Not sure how well to run remoted into the machine, but hey, why not? Keep this going for a few more minutes. So yeah, the cool thing about Chocolatey is, and any package manager really, it is just its scriptability. And when I was teaching, I was working fairly closely with the IT manager at the school, and the couple of months right before I ended up leaving, I was working on a project for the computer lab at the school that would allow us to keep it updated using a combination of Chocolatey installed on all the machines, and then Ansible. And Ansible is one technology that I'm just amazed with, and I really want to, hopefully this summer I'll get to do my deep dive into Ansible that I've wanted to do for about 3 years now. But I was actually having some decent success doing updates on the Windows machines in the computer lab while I was sitting in my classroom and working on another machine. I had a Linux VM that had Ansible running on it, and just had it working halfway decent before I left. That was also where I got to run my initial experiments with fog and imaging computers over the network. I was put in charge of, with my students, I was put in charge of updating all of the laptops that the students used. And to preserve my own sanity, guess I better reconnect to that, turn off the game. to protect my own sanity and get it done as quickly as possible, I set up a fog server. And was able to push those out fairly quick. Okay, so I guess I'm playing Donkey Kong. And I guess I'm dead. Alright, so yeah. Let's see. Okay, how do I get out of Donkey Kong? There we go. Okay, now I can get out of there. So yeah, not sure where I was going. Yeah, I don't do much gaming on Windows computers or computers in general. I honestly don't do that much gaming on consoles anymore. The last console I bought was a PlayStation 3. And I used it more for a Blu-ray player than I ever did to play games. Which, yeah, I guess I bought in early enough that it was one of the best Blu-ray players on the market at the time, and playing games was a bonus. And yeah, once stores start opening up and I can get access to disc traders, which I don't know if they've got one by you, but they sell used video games and game systems and different things like that. I'm kind of itching to pick up some more PS3 games and start playing through some of those things that I couldn't afford new at the time. But we'll see what happens. I'm not opposed to ordering mail order or eBay if I have to, if this COVID thing goes on for too much longer. So yeah, we've been at this for almost an hour and a half. Do you have any other questions that I can try to answer? If not, then I'm going to close out the live stream in the next few minutes and make another attempt to get a couple hours worth of sleep before I've got a 9 a.m. Zoom meeting. So, and that's less than 4 hours away. So I might get 2 hours of sleep. Okay. Templates. Oh, look at that. It did come in. There we go. Storage, local. Next. We want storage on my ISOs because of my misconfiguration. And we'll give it 25 gigs. 2 CPUs and memory. Network. Really want it to be bridged. And hopefully that will create my Nextcloud container, provided I've configured it correctly. Yeah, I know. So I'm not thrilled about using Zoom. I've been pushing Jitsi Meet myself because it's open source and I could run a server on Vultr or DigitalOcean or AWS or wherever else. I'm involved with a local community center slash business incubator slash maker space, I guess, to just sum it up real quick. And the guy that runs the place runs a 9 a.m. Scrum meeting using Zoom, and just gets people talking and kind of, you know, moral support, keeping people motivated during COVID. And so that's about the only thing I use Zoom for. I would prefer not to have it installed on any of my systems at all, to be honest. But I feel like my approach to security is better than most people out there. For home users, and so I'm not real concerned at this point either. Coupled with the fact that my backup system is not attached to my main computer 100% of the time, gives me a little extra peace of mind as well. But you know, it's one of those your mileage may vary situations. In an ideal world, I would refuse to have it on my machine. Unfortunately, right now I don't have that luxury. I have played around a little bit with having Zoom installed in a VirtualBox VM, a Linux VirtualBox VM, with USB pass-through for the camera and microphone. And my initial testing doing that seemed to work halfway decent. And so if I'm stuck at home due to COVID past May, I'm going to get that tweaked to the point where I just boot that VM every morning for the Scrum meeting, and then I restore it from a snapshot after every Scrum meeting, and then I know I've got a clean system. So yeah, that's my feeling on Zoom, and I think it's kind of in line with the people at Google and the New York City public school system, and seems like it was NASA or somebody else that banned the use of Zoom for the security, because of the security issues. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. But thank you, Carlos, for hanging out with me for the last 90 minutes. I really appreciate it. It definitely helped me pass the time while I was suffering through this insomnia. So yeah, I agree. It can't be helped when everybody is endorsing Zoom, and hopefully as a result of COVID, or a byproduct of COVID, we will see other players in that field coming to a little more prominence, or at least gaining a little more mind share with at least the techies out there, and you know, keeping things like Jitsi Meet as a backup to Zoom, because you know, in an hour or less, I could spin up a Jitsi Meet server in the cloud and have it locked down and private to a single organization, with users and all that kind of thing set up so that only people with a username and password on that server can log in and use that Jitsi Meet server. But in any event, I'm going to let you go, Carlos. Thank you for hanging out with me, and if you haven't before, please feel free to check out some of my other videos, and I'm always open to comments and suggestions on those videos. But now that I've got this live stream running pretty decent, given my limited upload speed here where I'm at, these live streams are going to be happening more often. Probably not at this particular time, but who knows? The longer COVID goes, the more middle of the night live streams I'll be doing. So thanks once again. Have a great day, and stay safe, and keep all your friends and family safe as much as you can do. And I will see you in a future live stream, and maybe one day I'll get to have you on a live call on Jitsi Meet or something, and put that on the live stream as well. So that's something I'm looking to do hopefully in the next few weeks. So, all right. Have a great day. I'll talk to you later. Happy computing, and yeah, stay safe.